Hey guys, DC here, coming at you with another video. Back when Pokemon Sun and Moon were first coming out, there were rumors circulating about the final evolutions for the starters of the Alola region being Litten, Rowlet, and Popplio. I remember at the time, obviously, the infamous leak happened where we had the internal documents that had the confidential marks on them with the art for the final evolution of the starters in Incineroar, Primarina, and Decidueye. I remember at the point in time, most people within the community thought that these images were fake, but I actually bought into them at the time. And I remember on top of that, there was another rumor circulating about the final evolution for the Alolan starters, and that was that apparently they were going to have split evolutions depending on the version that you got. So if you got Pokemon Sun, for example, you would get Incineroar, Primarina, or Decidueye respectively, depending on the starter that you chose. But if you had Pokemon Moon, the starter trio would have completely different evolutions for them. And this is an idea that I have been wanting to see for so long within the Pokemon franchise. I think the fact that we have split evolutions within Pokemon is really cool. I love that you have a line like Scyther that can evolve into either Skeezor or Kleavor respectively. I love that you have a line like Ralts that can evolve into Gardevoir or Gallade respectively. I think that's a really cool aspect of the Pokemon franchise that we see these Pokemon branch off into separate evolutionary paths, and it's something that I'm quite frankly surprised that they haven't explored yet in the starter trios. I think this would work rather well, and especially given the fact that we get two versions of every Pokemon game, it would help distinguish and differentiate the two versions even further, because really right now, what's the difference between getting Pokemon Sword or Shield, or Pokemon Scarlet or Violet? What is the difference between these two versions? Typically, all it really is you get a different cover legendary, right? You get a few exclusive Pokemon to each game, but those are rather easy to come by. You just trade with people online to get the exclusives from the other game into your game rather quickly. And there might be a few regional variants that are exclusive, or maybe another legendary that's exclusive to the game, and that's really it. There's not really that distinctive of a difference between two versions of a Pokemon game. Maybe you'll have a different gym leader every now and then, but typically they're relatively the same games. And I feel like a way to further develop this two-game formula is by introducing separate starter evolutions depending on the version that you get. Because realistically speaking, I feel like, and I've said this before in the past on other videos, I really do feel like the two-game formula for Pokemon needs to die, because I feel like the fact that we made the jump to the Nintendo Switch back in 2018 with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, now that the games are $60 each, it feels less and less needy, if you want to say, or less and less appropriate, maybe is a better term, that we have two versions for every Pokemon game. Because back in the day when they were on the DS, they were $35 each. Back in the day when they were on the 3DS, they were $40 each. And I feel like back then it worked, but I feel like just now it's kind of run its course. I feel like having two versions is something that pretty much everyone within the community has kind of had enough of. And I understand the reason for this and the reason why Game Freak might not move away from this ever, because they make more money that way. You have people like me who shell out, $120 to get both versions of the game. There are a lot of people within the Pokemon community that do that. A lot of the core fan base likes to get both versions because they want to collect all the Pokemon. I've been doing that since the original X and Y. That's when I started doing that. I bought Pokemon X, and then I remember for Christmas that year I got Pokemon Y because I really wanted to get an Yveltal. And this is something that's been going on within the franchise from the get-go, right? They've always been doing the two-version formula and even expanded it from, remember we were getting those third versions back in the day, your Pokemon Yellows, your Crystals, your Emeralds, your Platinums of the world. Well, when Gen 5 came out, they decided to make that even a two-game formula now. Instead of getting a third version in Pokemon Gray or whatever you want to call it for Black and White, we got Black 2 and White 2. And the same thing happened for Sun and Moon. We got Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I think that this two-game formula really needs to end, and obviously it's not something that's happening anytime soon, but if you're going to stick with this and you're going to keep making two versions of each game, as much as I dislike it, at least make it more worth our while and make it more interesting, because really, as I said before, the only difference is, yeah, there's a different cover legendary, maybe there's a different gym, maybe there's some exclusive Pokemon, and that's really it. They don't do much else than that. The only time we've seen them really do more than that is with Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, and this was something that I loved back in the day, and I would love to see them return to this. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, if you played Pokemon Ruby, you had Team Magma as the villains of the game, and if you played Pokemon Sapphire, you had Team Aqua as the villains of the game. This is something that I love to see, and I would love to see them explore that again, but again, this this is something that we haven't seen happen within the franchise in quite some time. And I feel like, again, if you're going to continue this 2-game formula, you should differentiate these games even further. And I feel like the coolest way to do so would be by making split evolutions for your starter lines. Like, imagine if you were playing Pokemon Red and Blue as a kid. Imagine if you bought Pokemon Red, you get, Charizard as your starter, and then you get a Squirtle, you get a Bulbasaur, you evolve them into Venusaur and Blastoise respectively. Then you find out from your buddy down the block that, hey, Jimmy, did you know that there is a different evolution for Charmander in Pokemon Blue? And you're going to be like, what? There is? Yeah, there's a totally different Pokemon than Charizard, Blastoise, and Venusaur in this game for those respective Pokemon. I think that would be something that would be so cool to see and would be really exciting to see. Now, the question is this something that they would ever do? And I'm kind of 50-50 on it. Quite frankly, I'm leaning towards more so no, maybe 60% no, 40% yes. And the reason I say that is because I feel like Game Freak and the Pokemon Company view the starters as major marketing points for a new generation of a Pokemon game, right? They're the Pokemon that I believe they designed pretty early on in development, if not the first Pokemon they designed for a new generation. And I feel like what they wouldn't want to do in this case is they wouldn't want to create one version that has cooler evolutions for the starters than another version. Like, for example, let's just say that Charizard is in Pokemon Red and Blastoise is in Blue, and when you evolve Charmeleon in Pokemon Blue, the Pokemon it evolves into is not as cool as Charizard, and then when you evolve Wartortle in Pokemon Red, the evolution for it is not as cool as the Blastoise you get in Pokemon Blue. I feel like that's something they're probably a little bit leery of and cognizant of, that they don't want to split off these starter evolutions, but you could also argue they've kind of done that already. You could argue that with Charizard in Pokemon X and Y, they did that with Mega Charizard X and Mega Charizard Y. Mega Charizard X is clearly the fan favorite of the two. They did the same thing with Mewtwo as well. We got Mega Mewtwo X and Mega Mewtwo Y, and Mega Mewtwo Y is clearly the fan favorite of the two. So it's not like this is something they haven't done in the past, but I just wonder if it's something that they're cognizant of, that they don't want to create one starter evolution in one version to be cooler than the other starter evolution in the other version, and that's something that you kind of can't avoid. There's going to be a favorite regardless of which version it's in. Like with Pokemon Legends ZA, we got Mega Raichu X and Mega Raichu Y. Even though they're in the same game, there's going to be a fan favorite between the two of them. I don't really know what the consensus is for that. Maybe that's something they're trying to avoid, but again, I really don't see a reason for them to not do this, especially if they're gung-ho on keeping this 2-version formula going. Let's do more with it. Let's have there be 2 evil teams like you did back in Ruby and Sapphire. Let's have it be that the starters get split evolutionary lines. I mean, we got something similar to that in Pokemon Sun and Moon with Cosmog. Remember Cosmog evolves into Cosmoem and then that evolves into either Solgaleo or Lunala? They've done this before with other Pokemon. This isn't something new, but for some reason they haven't explored this yet with the starters, and I really hope this is something we get to see in the future. Who knows, maybe when they announce Gen 10, this is something we see in Pokemon Wind and Waves, but I'm not really going to put my money on that happening. Anyways, let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think about all of this. What do you guys think about the possibility of us getting split evolutionary lines for the starters depending on the version of the game you have at some point in the future? Is this something that you'd want to see happen like I do, or would you rather them not explore this possibility? And do you agree with me that they should stop doing the 2-version formula in general, but if they are set on continuing that trend that they've been doing since the start of the franchise, you gotta start to differentiate the games a bit more. Do some things different. Have them be different in a few ways, like we had Team Aqua and Team Magma back in the day for Pokemon Sapphire and Ruby respectively. Do something like that in modern Pokemon. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to see more content like this from Trainer DC. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.